The story starts with an intimate interview in the cozy setting of Henry and CLA's home. Love becomes the focal point as they openly discuss their journey, dealing with the complexities of Henry's unpredictable time-traveling ability. Henry explains the process, how it effortlessly transports him to unfamiliar moments in the past, leaving him bewildered upon returning. When asked about their first meeting, the couple shares a laugh, explaining that it's complicated as Henry encountered CLA at various points in her life. The scene then shifts to a time before they formally met. Years ago, Henry works diligently in a library, absorbing vital knowledge about the past for his survival. One morning, a colleague quizzes him about the clothes scattered in his home after he arrives to work on time. With a wry smile, he simply says it's a long story. Henry helps a red-haired woman at the library's front desk. CLA recognizes him from 14 years ago, when an older Henry had met her as a child, identifying his birthmarks and scars. She hadn't seen him this young before, and had eagerly anticipated their meeting for years. In the afternoon, Henry cleans his messy apartment, surprises CLA with flowers at the restaurant, and receives a book with significant dates, learning he appeared in her past 152 times over 14 years, leaving him bewildered. CLA reveals a future version told her they'd marry. Intrigued, Henry questions CLA about their past meetings and shared experiences. The scene shifts back to CLA meeting 6-year-old Henry. She gave him her father's clothes and bombarded him with questions about his remarkable ability. Henry answered her, hinted at his potential disappearance, and asked her to leave clothes under a specific rock. Henry shares his first time travel at age 7, helped by his 28-year-old self, who appeared on the same night as his date with CLA. That day was when he met his younger self. Afterward, he encountered a couple in an alley, taking the man's clothes and the flower he gave his date at the restaurant where CLA waited. Following their date, Henry accompanies CLA to his apartment, and the two share an intense, passionate encounter. As CLA leaves the bed to enter the bathroom, she stumbles upon women's underwear, leaving her incensed. She confronts Henry about not disclosing the presence of another woman in his life, and promptly exits the apartment. Simultaneously, a 36-year-old version of Henry emerges from the future, observing CLA's departure after his younger self had upset her. He follows CLA into a bar, where the older Henry issues a heartfelt apology for his younger self's thoughtless actions. He earnestly tells her that she is the best thing that ever happened to him, and pleads for her patience and understanding. Leaving the bar, Henry meets his 28-year-old self, who advises on heart matters. Later, young Henry discovers his severed feet in the alley, muttering, "Not today." The conversation continues with Claire interviewing Henry, exploring his time travel abilities. They highlight his talent for time travel, focusing on how he primarily revisits his own past. Henry shares instances of revisiting specific moments repeatedly, unable to resist. The scene shifts to a memory of 8-year-old Henry in a car with his mother. At a red light, a red car slides on the snowy road, colliding with a truck ahead. A steel sheet from the truck crashes through the windshield, tragically taking his mother's life. Various Henry versions watch his younger self witness the horrifying incident. An older Henry travels back to meet 6-year-old Claire. She asks about his parents, noticing his sadness. He promises to tell her when a person in green brings her a banana latte in the future. The story shifts to 28-year-old Henry and 20-year-old Claire arguing on a train. Claire questions why he's not fighting their destiny, but he explains they can't change the future. When she asks about lunch, he points to the planned place, but she chooses a different cafe. Just as they settle down, a man decked out in green serves Claire a banana latte, explaining that he's dressed up for a children's show. Recalling her inquiry about his mother, Claire notices the sadness in his expression and invites him to share. Henry opens up, describing his mother as an opera singer and narrating the accident that claimed her life. Touched by his story, Claire reaches for his hand and encourages him to share more about himself. Henry goes on to recount the comical way his father discovered his time-traveling ability when he caught him with 2 versions of himself engaging in some peculiar activities. With a sense of relief, he continues sharing about his family and how he's gotten to know them from a distance by returning to the past numerous times. He asks Claire if she'd like to go for a walk and treats her to hot dogs, then reveals the secret that he was the one who trained himself in the art of time travel. He explains how, each time he appeared in the past, He would find his younger self and teach him survival skills like stealing and self-defense. The scene changes to 24-year-old Henry with his 8-year-old self on the streets. Older Henry teaches younger Henry how to steal discreetly, visits an art gallery, and buys him food. He talks to young Henry about saving their mother, stressing it's impossible. He predicts young Henry's actions, and when his mother appears, she thinks he's skipping school. Following an argument with his mother, 24-year-old Henry takes his younger self to the bathroom and reveals their shared identity in the present time. He opens up to Claire, explaining his failed attempts to alter tragic events. They visit his workplace, closed on Sundays, where he shows her a vast archive of books. Henry shares articles and recordings of his mother, collected over the years, sometimes using time travel to revisit these moments when he's upset about something he remembers. Henry expresses his desire for Claire to meet his mother and prompts her to pose a question she would ask if his mother were present. After hearing her question, he plays a recording of his mother's response. As they listen to her mother's voice, they both become emotional, moved by the answer. The scene transitions to another interview, with Claire having aged significantly. She addresses her husband, hoping he's not endlessly replaying these moments. In the recording, she reflects on how childhood often consists of waiting for exciting events to unfold. She mentions the challenge of meeting one's soulmate at the age of 6. On their first meeting, Henry had promised they'd meet again in a few days, and she had diligently counted down the moments until that day arrived. Years later, an unfortunate incident occurred when Henry appeared, but her father and brother were hunting, and they accidentally shot him. Claire rushed out upon hearing his call, but he had vanished by the time she reached the scene, leaving only a trace of his blood before it too disappeared. Fast forward to when Claire is 16. On one designated day, Henry arrives to find no clothes in their usual box. A few seconds later, Claire appears, looking stunning in a short dress and makeup. She playfully informs him that his clothes are scattered all around, and they engage in a game of checkers. Henry earns his clothing back piece by piece. When he succeeds, Claire tries to kiss him, but he maintains self-control and suggests they go for ice cream. During the next meeting, Claire decides to make him a little jealous by attending a party instead of meeting at their usual spot, leaving behind only a sandwich and his clothes. Following her time at the social gathering, CLA comes to the conclusion that she'd prefer Henry's company. Sadly, when she arrives at their planned rendezvous, he's nowhere to be found. During their subsequent meeting, Henry notices that CLA is emotionally distressed. After a somewhat unclear conversation, she requests that he deal with another student, without giving a specific reason. Putting his faith in her, Henry consents and makes arrangements for a credible alibi. Henry then manages to temporarily secure the student and puts him in CLA's vehicle. The two then head to an isolated forest area. Upon arrival, CLA elaborates that her intention wasn't for Henry to seriously injure the student, but to give him a stern warning. She discloses that she's been on the receiving end of physical abuse from the young man they've detained, offering her bruises as evidence. She goes on to say that the boy had lured her to an out-of-the-way place and became hostile when she chose not to proceed further. Henry leads the boy into the woods, securing him to a tree in a desperate bid. The boy, in a last-ditch effort to save himself, claims that CLA enjoyed their night together, citing a text she supposedly sent. He insists she likes it rough. This angers Henry, who accidentally reveals he's CLA's husband. The revelation shocks CLA, realizing Henry's departure is imminent. Before leaving, he hands her a Parker pen, convinced she'll need it, although he can't remember why. Henry disappears after returning to his own time. Later, CLA mentions that on the night they took Jason to the woods and he vanished, she reached out to all the girls, using the marker he had given her to document the abusive experiences they endured from the boy. She transformed him into a sculpture, igniting her artistic journey. CLA encounters Henry again at 18 years old before meeting him in her correct timeline at age 20. In another scene, a 28-year-old Henry visits CLA's house for lunch with her friend Gomez. Gomez greets him with an attitude for a reason not yet understood. Upon going upstairs, Henry encounters Chess, CLA's other close friend and Gomez's girlfriend, while CLA's cooking attempts turn disastrous. Taking charge of the meal, Henry intervenes. Suddenly, the doorbell rings, and CLA is surprised to find 41-year-old Henry standing at the door. She rushes back to call Henry from her timeline, and they manage to discreetly hide the older Henry in her bedroom. The scene shifts to when the 41-year-old Henry had time-traveled to CLA's 18th birthday when they first met at the clearing. She prepared a picnic, signaling for him to join her. It was their last date for 2 years. He advised her to embrace life and mentioned his 26-year-old counterpart in her timeline who was doing just that. He wanted her to savor life's experiences before their next meeting. They shared a passionate embrace and kisses, although Henry hesitated at first. CLA tempted him, and they became intimate. Afterward, Henry executed a time jump, transporting them 2 years into the future. He suddenly appeared at a lunch with his 28-year-old self, CLA, and her friends, a year after her 18th birthday. CLA woke up in bed with Gomez and urgently told him to leave, fearing her best friend Charisse and Gomez's girlfriend would return soon. In the kitchen, CLA tearfully explained her drunken mistake with Gomez and promised it wouldn't happen again. Despite being hurt, Gomez confessed his love for her, but she made it clear she was in love with someone else. After Gomez left, Charisse came home, and they shared a bottle of wine on the sofa, leading to an intimate encounter fueled by Charisse's advances. In the timeline where Henry was 28, his 41-year-old self visited him. They had a conversation in the bedroom and were joined by an unexpected guest, Ingrid, who was Henry's girlfriend in that timeline. CLA offered Ingrid drinks and discussed Henry with her. Gomez and Charisse also joined the conversation, and CLA's friends were surprised when Henry revealed the existence of his older self in the kitchen. As they grappled with the surprise, the two Henrys explained their unique situation during dinner. The older Henry offered Gomez investment advice, hinting at a future friendship. After a few drinks, Ingrid noticed the older Henry's gaze and openly asked if she was deceased in the future, expressing her fear of the knowledge causing her misery. He encouraged her to make the most of her time before disappearing into his own timeline. CLA was distraught by the abrupt disappearance of the man she had been regularly seeing. She rushed to her room, and when Henry followed, she asked if she would ever meet the Henry who had just vanished. Henry provided reassurance that she would, although he himself was not entirely certain. CLA embraced him as she rose from the bed. The scene transitioned to recordings of older Henry explaining that time travel presented relationship challenges, but wasn't the sole issue. In the next scene, 28-year-old Henry met Gomez at a bar. A hurtful comment about Gomez's feelings for his girlfriend offended Gomez, causing him to leave the bar. The following day, CLA and Henry traveled to her hometown to meet her parents. Gomez called, apologized, and offered to disclose where he had seen Henry before. However, he changed his mind after an inappropriate joke. At CLA's home, they had an awkward meeting with her family. Her father disapproved of Henry, creating tension during the meal. Afterward, CLA led Henry to his room. With a gentle kiss, he asked to see her room, hoping to find his way in the dark. In her room, he noticed the meadow, the clearing where CLA had met his older self. Suggesting a visit, CLA became defensive, explaining it was special to her and his older self. Henry argued they were the same person, but CLA believed he had a long journey to become that person. A heated argument erupted about her constant comparison to his older self, making him feel she didn't wholly belong to him. Reassuring her, they focused on the present, leading to a passionate moment interrupted by CLA's brother calling them to lunch. Henry went to his room to freshen up. CLA's younger sister, Alicia, created a misleading situation, implying intimacy with him. CLA clarified, explaining her younger sister had found out about her sneaking him into the house. After the stressful encounter, Henry time-traveled to the future, confronting a biker while naked. A fight ensued, and future Gomez intervened, diffusing the situation and sharing an intimate moment of friendship. Henry warmed up to Gomez before his disappearance. Gomez asked for a future meeting date after Henry vanished. Alicia hinted her boyfriend's return. She heard Henry in the shower, covered for him, cited a minor disagreement to her parents, and he joined them. They struggled to explain his condition, stress triggered by CLA's brother, leading to CLA walking away. Henry and Alicia followed but saw her running to the clearing. Henry realized she sought his older self. He noticed drawings of various versions of himself, asked Alicia, a hairdresser, to style his hair like one. Later, he surprised CLA at the clearing, closely resembling the man she missed. She confessed her love, and they shared a passionate kiss. They slept, Henry's abilities awoke, and he found himself in a future house with a camera and clothes. He picked up a tape, heard CLA's voice, and time traveled back. When he was 16, Henry's father caught him in an intimate moment and forced him to reveal his time-traveling secret. In another timeline, 20-year-old CLA and 28-year-old Henry planned their wedding. After a time travel episode, Henry became cranky and uninterested. A night later, he saw their wedding video and time traveled back to his timeline, with 5 weeks left until the wedding. Arriving in the morning, CLA asked Henry to shower, and they had lunch with his father. His father liked CLA. Henry time traveled to their future house, sharing lottery numbers. He hid them for his future self. With 4 weeks until the wedding, anxiety led to frequent time travels. He stopped telling CLA after seeing her cry in the future. He suspected he might die earlier. Days before the wedding, Gomez and Henry met with a drug dealer named Ben. Waiting for Henry, he experienced uncontrollable time travels. He landed in a stable future, learning about CLA's pregnancies and his vasectomy. He returned to the wedding day. During the ceremony, CLA realized it wasn't her Henry, but proceeded. The show ended with the married couple dancing. In the future, 29-year-old CLA and 28-year-old Henry watched wedding videos. Young Henry apologized for the vasectomy, and CLA informed him it hadn't happened yet.